The NBA draft is just a day away. Welcome back into the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. I'm Matt Norlander. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to engage with us. Shoot us some comments, some questions. Joining me on this special episode, we do this every year, a big mock episode. We've got KB, our lead NBA draft expert at CBSSports.com, and Adam Finkelstein, the international executive director of all things scouting for 247 Sports. I don't know if that's the technical title, but he is here as well. We're going to get into a lot of first round discussion and some of our second round guys that we think are good sleepers. Shouts to Gary Parrish, of course. He's doing a few things on the home front, a personal matter. If you follow him on Twitter, you are aware of the update he provided. He is fine. No reason to worry on that end. But if you have not checked, please be sure to go out and check his feed. And he will be back on the show very soon and can explain stuff from his side of things. But he's doing relatively well. All things are well with him, but he is going through a personal matter. That's why he's missed a couple of shows. And since he has publicly announced why that happened, I figured I at least wanted to address that. And we can get into that more on the next episode.
Love you, GP.
Love you, GP. Let's talk NBA draft here. So on Tuesday night, Boone, Adam, and I went on CBS Sports HQ, and we did what I thought was going to be an hour-long special. It's actually like an 85-minute special mock draft situation. So what we are going to do on this show, as opposed to like me making a pick, Boone making a pick, Adam making a pick, which is what we did on HQ, we are going to read off the mock draft we did on Tuesday and talk about these players and talk about whether we would agree if these players are going to go here, because we're trying to predict team behavior, personal disagreements with all that. So with every single pick, with every player, I'm going to announce where we had this player going, and then the guys will tee up and give us their opinions. This is going to be, if you're looking for a cram session on the draft for Thursday, this is absolutely the episode for you. And we'll have some bonus goodies on the end with second round sleepers and all that good stuff here. So obviously, San Antonio is at 1. It's going to take Victor Wembanyama. We might as well spend one more moment talking about him here. There is no doubt to this. It is an inevitability, but we are at now, Adam, we're at the final stage here where he is not a member of an actual NBA franchise. And from here on out, I guess the hype only increases. So on that front, I guess it's only fair to at least ask you if the collective evaluation, NBA community, the media, everyone, right, have we actually set the bar too high for Wembanyama? Because it does feel like it has reached a level that in my lifetime, I do remember LeBron being at this level, but I don't remember any NFL player being this hyped. And there have been some big time hype number 1 picks. I don't remember anyone reaching that. I don't want to ask if we're setting him up to fail, because I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but are people that are hearing all this Wemby mania stuff, are they going to be potentially like a little like, this was what this guy was all about by the end of his rookie year or his second year? Or is there a real potential in your eyes that he could become, top 15 player in the league by the end of his second season?
So it's all about the durability. And, what I'll say is that the only thing that is as big as his listed height and his wingspan is the amount of hyperbole that the media has used leading up to this draft. I mean, we're calling him 7'4". When he stands next to Rudy Gobert, it's pretty clear he's bigger than 7'4". So I'm going to go 7'5". Reported 8-foot wingspan, but I would love to see the tape measure that measured that. Doing things offensively that we just haven't seen before, like one-footed 3-pointers. His dominance in the defensive end of the floor is just unmatched because he can move at that size too. But the word I like to use here, I think it's the most accurate word, is unprecedented. He is an unprecedented prospect. We've never seen the overlap of size, length, defensive dominance, offensive skill, mobility, and athleticism. We've also never seen someone this size, period. So we don't know how he's going to hold up physically. And that's the biggest question. So I think I'm just going to continue to say unprecedented, because best prospect we've ever seen. The first person I heard use that title was Mike Schmitz when he was still at ESPN. He's now the assistant GM at Portland Trail Blazers. I have an immense amount of respect for Mike Schmitz. So yeah, I think when you can check all those boxes and it's totally unique, best prospect of it, sure, I'll go with that. But not a sure thing. No prospect is a sure thing. And I think that's the point that we've got to really get across here, is that nobody is a sure thing. But best prospect in a decade, like, I'm not going to fight you on that.
Kyle, you have covered Wemby for .com for well over a year. You are our resident Wemby expert. Put a bow on everything that has led up to this point and what your expectations are. We'll keep it in the same framework here, for his rookie season and maybe even year two when he will have a ton of eyes on him practically on a nightly basis.
Yeah, expectations are obviously very high. He's long been considered the number one pick, even going back a year, maybe longer. He made the switch to play with Mets 92 this past year, basically on a schedule where plays once a week for the most part. I mean, it changed a little bit during the playoffs and kind of the postseason where they played a little bit more frequently, but it was a strategic move, I think, by him and by his team to develop slowly. They wanted to give his body time to develop. He's still just a teenager. And last time we talked on this podcast, Norlander, he was 7'5". Hearing reports now he could actually be back up to 7'6".
Stop. That's not
7'7", 7'8". He's creeping up there.
I know.
Tall.
I know. There's a picture of him out there from FIBA Americas, and he's standing next to Edie. And even though he's got the frizzy hair, he looks like he clears Edie by 2 inches in that picture. And Edie's a humongous human being. So I hear you.
He is. Mostly joking there, but around 7'5", 8-foot wingspan. I mean, this is a guy who is doing pregame workouts that includes bear crawls on his fingertips and his toes. He does big toe workouts. And so I think he's had a good staff and team around him that have prepared him for making this leap from Mets 92 and playing in Pro A, which is the best professional league in France, to the NBA. There is going to be an adjustment, though. I think people should maybe try and curtail some expectations if you possibly can.
Yeah.
I still think he's going to be the best rookie next season, but
you think he's going to win Rookie of the Year? I got to jump in. Yeah. Don't you have to play 65 games to win Rookie of the Year? He's going to the Spurs.
Yeah. Yeah. My bet would be Scoot there. I think Scoot is good value. You get some plus value. Scoot to win Rookie of the Year. He's someone who I think his game is going to translate immediately, whether it's with the Hornets or the Trailblazers or somewhere else if someone tries to trade up. And I think the Spurs will be very deliberate and work kind of hand in hand with Wembanyama on his development. I think Wembanyama is going to push to play every single game next season. And I think the Spurs will say, hey, look, we're not a very good team right now. We want to bring you along. We don't want to rush this thing. And so that's going to be kind of an interesting tug and pull. But yeah, I think, in a few years, as his body continues to develop and mature and grow, he is an elite defensive prospect. He's not just a shot blocker, kind of on the interior in the same way like Rudy Gobert is. This dude is blocking shots from 3-point range, from the elbow. His length is absurd. And so I've never seen anyone, with that type of defensive range. And I think that makes him such a unique defensive prospect. Then when you watch him on offense, I asked the scout, how do you compare him? I'm like, yeah, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Chet Holmgren. He's like, no, he has some Chet to his game, but he's a mix of Rudy Gobert. He's a mix of Kevin Durant. He's a mix of a number of different players. And you're ringing off all-star, future Hall of Fame type prospects. So I'm adding to the hyperbole here right now. I can tell that Adam Finkelstein's giving me the sly grin, shut your mouth. But yeah, the expectations are high. I think it's fair to have high expectations. He's someone, as Finkelstein alluded to, he's an unprecedented prospect. We've never seen anything quite like Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, there are still, I've been hearing from a couple NBA folks in the past couple of weeks, still some, want to see how that body holds up. Just want to, I don't want to look up in 3 years and see that he has only played 53% of his allotted games and he's just having issues. So I just want to put that out there on the record before he gets drafted. I don't want that to happen, but there is some, I would say The concern about that is a tad more prominent, maybe behind the scenes than what we are seeing discussed publicly. But maybe that changes like the second he gets drafted, and they don't think he's going to play summer league, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see. Wemby's going to go number 1. He's the biggest story in this draft. This is the Wemby draft, and then everything else is a backdrop. Although, let's move on here. Charlotte at 2, Portland at 3. On our mock draft special, we had Miller going to Charlotte, Scoot going to Portland. Let's combo these because there's 2 different discussions to be had. And Boone, I'll tee you up first. I think Scoot Henderson will be the better NBA player, but from a fit standpoint, given that Charlotte has LaMelo Ball, if it thinks that LaMelo Ball is going to be the guy that's going to run that offense for another 5 to 8 to 10 years, and you think you're going to have a little too much overlap with Scoot, Brandon Miller, a complimentary player on the wing, whose evaluation might be side by side, could be the pick there. Boone, who is Charlotte going to take in your opinion, and who do you think will be the better player?
Yeah, a lot of things are happening. Things are happening very quickly. When the Charlotte Hornets got the number 2 pick, immediate kind of reaction was that it was most likely going to be Brandon Miller. He was the betting favorite to go number 2. That has changed in recent days. Scoot Henderson jumped up as the betting favorite by a wide margin to go number 2. And now, over the last 24 hours, we're flip-flopping again, baby. Brandon Miller now.
By the way, this happened with the number 1 pick a little later. But there was a lot of this nonsense noise happening last year as well. But yes, to your point, now Scoot is now the favorite again after there was a brief little period there where Scoot was the favorite. Continue, KB.
Yes. So now it has flipped again. Brandon Miller. There's reporting out this week from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN that kind of suggests that Charlotte really likes Brandon Miller, and it seems to be that Miller is maybe the preferred pick here. The betting markets certainly reflect that. Brandon Miller is now again the betting favorite to go number 2 to the Charlotte Hornets. I don't think it's necessarily a mistake. I think Scoot Henderson is a better prospect than Brandon Miller, and I wouldn't worry so much about how does Scoot fit with LaMelo Ball. I think Scoot is a great prospect who could play on and off the ball. His shooting development, I think, has shown some real promise. LaMelo can obviously play off the ball. He's a really good 3-point shooter. And so I think you look to the Oklahoma City Thunder, like they play multiple guards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, no problem. In fact, I think that is kind of the model for future success in the NBA. You can't have enough smart, connective pieces who are good playmakers, can shoot it, can do a lot of different things, can play multiple positions in the backcourt. So, I think it would, if I'm the Hornets picking at number 2, I would take Scoot Henderson. I totally understand why Charlotte will, or is at least expected to take Brandon Miller at number 2. He's 6'9". He shoots 39% from 3-point range. He's his own kind of offensive weapon, can create off the dribble a little bit, can be a flashy kind of scoring wing at the next level, and fits obviously next to LaMelo Ball at a level that I think makes sense. I think if Charlotte has conviction and feels like Brandon Miller is a better prospect than Scoot Henderson, then fine. I have no problem with them taking Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson at number 2. My issue would be they think that Brandon Miller is a better fit, but not a better prospect than Scoot Henderson, and they just take the better fit at number 2 and take Brandon Miller. That's where you get into some issues. But if they end up taking Brandon Miller and feel like he is the better prospect and the better fit, you get a little twofer there. I think you can build around kind of a LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller kind of 1-2 combo. Either way, I think it's exciting. I think I would prefer Scoot, obviously, but end up going Brandon Miller. I can't totally fault them for that either.
Adam, go ahead. Hop in here. What are your thoughts on this debate for 2-3 and how it's kind of evolved and changed over the past week?
So I think that you can make an argument for either player being the best prospect. I think that one of the things that, what's that called? Like hot takes exposed, when they they're going to get me. I got to do the grades this year, so they're going to get me undoubtedly. But that's what it's called.
Part of the gig. Yeah, that is, by the way, that is a product update there. Finkelstein and I will be on the CBS Sports HQ draft show on Thursday night, and Adam will be dishing out the grades. I need a vow and promise on this podcast right now that you will deliver at least 2 C's. I can't.
No such promise granted.
Oh my God.
So here's what I would say, though. I think that the the longer I've been doing this, the more like I'm hedging my bets. And not because I know that's like bad media, but it's also reflective of like what really happens behind closed doors in NBA, you know, and with NBA decision makers. Is I don't think there's a consensus about who's going to be the better prospect long term. So I'm open to either on that. If you like Scoot because of the athleticism, because of the playmaking, the mindset, the creativity, great. If you like Brandon Miller because of the overlap of size and skill and shot making and some subtle passing, great. If you're concerned about Scoot's his shooting and his defensive inconsistencies, I get it. If you're concerned about Brandon Miller's rim finishing and you know the lack of strength at a fairly advanced age for a college freshman, I get it. What I think to me, this is about process. So I don't really care who Charlotte takes with that pick, but I think the way they go about making that pick is really important. So, for example, 5 years from now, if it turns out that Scoot becomes a much better player than Brandon Miller, the fact that they had LaMelo Ball is not going to be an acceptable justification for saying, well, we had to take Brandon because we already had LaMelo. That's not going to cut it 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. The other thing that won't cut it will be, well, we brought them both back in for a secondary workout, and Brandon looked better in 1-on-0 than Scoot did. Like, so that's nonsense as well, and that's what happened. You know, I mean, they brought Scoot the first round of workouts. They came in, and Scoot looked really good. Scoot's going to look better because Brandon's just getting over mono. He was already lean. He lost a bunch of weight in mono when he had mono, and he didn't go through the normal pre-draft process. Scoot's going to look better. To me, I think if I were Charlotte, what I would be digging into here is all the stuff around. I know this is a sensitive subject, but all the stuff around Brandon Miller, what happened off the floor at Alabama, how reliable he is, because some of the intel about his interviews has not been great. And I think his team and his agent and stuff like that have worked really hard on the PR front, rightfully so. That's their job, to make sure it is represented in a positive way in the media. But when you talk to NBA sources who've been in the room with them, and not specific to that incident this year, but just in general, some of the takeaways have not been overwhelming. So I think Scoot probably interviews better than Brandon does as well. Quite frankly, with Miles Bridges coming back, this is the other thing that like people don't want to talk about, but I think it's got to be a real concern for Charlotte. Like, are we concerned about Miles Bridges given his off the court issues and Brandon Miller? Like, is that the type of support system we want around him? Those guys would be sharing not only a lot of time on the floor, but spending presumably a decent amount of time together off the floor. So I think these issues are all relevant, have to be part of the decision-making process. It sounds like they're doing their due diligence. They sent people down to Tuscaloosa to really dig into Brandon's year and what happened down there. But so again, this to me is about process. I'm okay with either guy. I think you can make a justification for either player being the better long-term prospect. But this should not be a pick based on fit or based on a 1-on-0 workout. Looks like it's going to be Miller. I don't put out the question that it could wind up being Scoot when we actually get to that moment. We will wait and see. As a few people have told me this week, the draft starts at number 4 because we know players 1, 2, and 3, maybe a little bit of debate between 2 and 3. So we will get to the rest of our mock draft right after this. Nada, do your thing. A word from our sponsors right now.
You gonna start the engine sometime soon, Erica?
Do you know the odds of all of us being here at this time? It's improbable, yet here we are, together.
Hold on to your saddles.
By the way, we've got a producer who has an emotionally vested interest in the team picking second, but I was asked not to tee him up for thoughts on that. So for our dedicated listenership who are hoping to hear from one Kanata Edwards on Charlotte, that will have to wait until the end of this episode, apparently at the earliest. Houston has the 4th pick in our mock draft. Amen Thompson from Overtime Elite went there. For those, and I think this is a lot of folks. Now, the diehard sect that is dedicated to following the draft is certainly up to date on Amen Thompson. He has been talked about, him and his brother. We'll get to Osar in just a second on this show in general in the lead up to the draft. But Adam, in a nutshell, who is Amen Thompson, and we've got him going forward to Houston. Is that actually, do you think that is a proper cultural fit and positional fit considering the roster they already have there and where Houston kind of sits in the lower end of the NBA hierarchy right now?
I think it's accurate based on the intel we have at the moment. The assumption is that they're debating between Amen and Cam Whitmore primarily. We're starting to hear they may favor Amen. There's really no reason for them to put out misinformation because we know the first three players who are going to be taken in this draft, regardless of who goes 2 and 3. So now, who is Amen Thompson? Amen Thompson is an elite athlete. I'll keep saying it. Top 1% of the NBA as soon as he gets in the league. He has the body type of a wing, 6'6", 6'7", 6'11" wingspan. I think he's like 211 pounds. And Boone, correct me if I'm wrong with any of those measurements, but elite athlete. The thing is, he's a total non-shooter, doesn't shoot at all. And there's Boone did a great piece on that, on some of the mechanical issues. Can he develop it down the road? We'll see. But because he's such a non-shooter, he kind of needs to have the ball in his hands. Now, he shows a lot of playmaking potential. I mean, like John Wall type speed. He throws some incredible passes. The interesting thing about a lot of his passes is the majority of them are typically to his twin brother. So you kind of wonder, like, does that translate to everybody else? I think that's a semi-legitimate, that's at least a relevant thread to pull. But, that kind of size, playmaking potential with the ball in his hands. But he is a bit of a high-risk, high-reward prospect because we are talking about a total non-shooter who needs to make strides, not even so much as like a three-point shooter, but as someone who, given his athletic gifts, if you put the ball in his hands, who every defender he faces for the foreseeable future is going to go under every single pick and roll. So he's got to be able to put like he's got to be able to make a pull-up, and that's not there right now.
Okay. At 5, we've got the Detroit Pistons. We have Jarris Walker from the Cougars going there. That does actually feel like a good fit. My read on Jarris Walker is his most likely landing spots are 5 to Detroit, 7 to Indiana, 9 to Utah. So 5 is the earliest he would be off the board here. We have him going that early. KB, quick thoughts on Jarris?
Yeah, at number 5 to the Pistons, I think would be a fantastic fit. Pistons already have kind of their backcourt locked up. They took Jaden Ivey last year, who I infamously had as the number 1 player in last year's class. They took Cade Cunningham the year prior with their number 1 pick. And that feels like a combo that you can build around. You add Jarris Walker to that mix, start to get some bad boy Detroit vibes. Like, this is a team that could be really fun to watch. A lot of enforcers, a lot of guys with a lot of swagger, a lot of confidence. Talking about like Jalen Duren, Jarris Walker, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart. Like, that is a fun team to watch. I think Jarris Walker, what we saw at Houston last season, kind of a combo forward, can shoot the 3 at a pretty high level. In high school, he was kind of a combo, like, playmaking wing type of prospect, and really his body has built out and matured in a way that he kind of projects to play like a power forward position in the NBA. But he can play like 3, 4, 5, I think. And the positional versatility that he brings, the defensive intensity that he will bring, I think is going to be really exciting. I think he should be in play here for the Pistons at number 5. This feels like probably as high as he will go. Mm-hmm. But I like the fit here for Jarris Walker in Detroit at number 5.
I got to sit down with Jarris on Tuesday, and he just a wonderful, wonderful young man, just infectious energy. As long as I think the right franchise can be patient with some of his faults, I think he can grow into a really promising player. I do think fit matters, and I do think that there's a potential for him to work in Detroit. Let's move on to 6. We've got Cam Whitmore going to Orlando. This is going to be fascinating. Let's talk Cam Whitmore here. I put out my annual big board mock, and I try to predict not where guys are going to get picked. I'm trying to tell you who I think will have the best NBA careers when we look 10 plus years down the road. So I've got Whitmore outside the top 10. It's going to be inevitable. We will have guys taken in the top 10 of this year's class who will prove not to be top 15 or even top 20 players in this class. It happens every year. So Whitmore, who I think I have 14 or right around there, I've got him much lower. I came to that conclusion, frankly, a couple weeks ago. But in recent weeks, even like his stock, Adam, has allegedly been slipping. Had a wonderful pro day. I mean, a year ago, I talked to a GM earlier this week who said a year ago, this guy, I was like, come on, man, this is a top 3 prospect in the 23 draft class. And now that same GM was saying, I wouldn't put him on my like personal top 10. And to be clear, this is not a GM picking in the top 10, but he's like, I can't believe how much I've changed my opinion on Cam Whitmore. Now, some of this has been the workout. Some of it has been he did not have an absolute standout season at Villanova. There were times near the end of close games where he was on the bench. It wasn't an ideal fit. I had another front office person tell me earlier this week he straight up just picked the wrong coach in the wrong school to play for. So there's a lot of weird stuff happening with Whitmore. However, I can't help but wonder, let's keep this in mind. I mean, it is, and kind of pull the phrase that's often used with the NFL draft, it is lying season, folks. I mean, it is lying season up and down, and understandably so. So we will wait and see if the Whitmore slide is actually real. One, Finkelstein, do you think it's real? We've got him going to 6, but do you actually think it's potential that he could even drop to 8 or 9 despite his undeniable physical attributes?
Well, I think that the root of this information about him sliding starts in Detroit, because as we talked about, like Houston, the perception is they'll choose between Amen and Whitmore. Detroit at 5 is the team that was widely presumed to then be the front runner to take Whitmore, because he could theoretically fit with Cunningham and Ivy because he made strides as a shooter. The intel now is that he did not have a good workout in Detroit. And this started, Matt, you and I were on CBS Sports HQ on Monday. I think we were the first ones to report this, because you started to hear NBA teams calling around, trying to suddenly potentially wondering if he's going to be available beyond the top 5, which was not something that teams assumed. So I will say this, I think if he doesn't go in the top 5, that Orlando will grab him quickly at 6. But to your point, he is one of the more polarizing prospects in the draft. And the reason being is that it's really hard for us in the media sometimes to talk about concerns that NBA teams have, whether it's, if it's about things that aren't between the lines. And I think that in Cam's case, there was, if you want to talk about between the lines, there was a really low assist rate last year, a almost historically poor assist rate. But if you watch the games, you would frequently see him break off from what Villanova was doing. You would just kind of see teammates didn't necessarily love playing with him. The motor was inconsistent. Now, his overlap of explosiveness and sheer power, coupled by the shooting strides he has made in the last couple of years, like that's real. So there's an argument to say you put him in NBA spacing and he's a top 3 prospect in this draft. That's legitimate. But I think to your point, Matt, to some of the what the GMs are saying, it's also legitimate that he may go in there and he say, you know what, I'm not gonna do this. What you're asking me to do. The fact that he could go to Detroit and have a bad workout, that to me is mind-boggling. Like, if you can't get up for that, what can you get up for? And again, I don't think this comes down to, just like I was saying with Charlotte, I don't think this comes down to how many shots you make in a 1-on-0 setting. I think this has to do with your interview, how you present, your energy level, and stuff like that. And if it were enough where Charlotte's like, I don't think Jarris Walker's upside is anywhere near Cam Whitmore's, just to put that out there. Old takes, you can nail me for this years down the road. But so if Detroit's really thinking about that pick, and Detroit's also a candidate to move down, I think it's pretty telling about the concerns they have about Cam Whitmore. Now, if you're Orlando at number 6, I think the upside is there. Anthony Black's a guy I would think about here, but I don't think Cam Whitmore goes past number 6, because his upside, if you're a fan of Cam Whitmore, there's a lot of people who think he's got a top 3 upside in this draft.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that Orlando actually pulls the trigger on the spot on Anthony Black. We will get to him shortly. He is due to be selected. Adam talked about the first Thompson twin. KB, you got the other one. So Indiana at 7, we've got him taking Asar. I think Indiana in this spot will be a fascinating pick, because we got to see what happens 4, 5, 6, who's on the board. My read on this is that Indiana will be receptive to whomever is still there, and and is more than happy with the options available that could be out there for them. So that being said, KB, what makes Asar different from Amen, his twin brother?
They're very similar. Asar is not quite the explosive athlete that Amen is. Amen is seen as a better playmaker, which is weird because you look at the numbers last season. Asar actually had more assists per game, 6.1, than Amen did, which was 5.9. So it was basically a draw. Asar is a more, I think, polished scoring weapon at this point. His shot is a little bit more settled. There's not a shoulder dip in his shot in the same way that we've seen recently with Amen, which I think is a little bit concerning. He's made pretty good strides, I think, as a shooter, kind of as a functional scorer. Really good athlete, improving finisher. Still not a totally reliable shooter, but he has definitely made, I think, some strides on that front. He can struggle a little bit to finish through contact when he's driving. Obviously, there's questions about the level of competition he faced playing in Overtime Elite, but led Overtime Elite in regular season and assist per game last season. Shot 40% on catch and shoot jumpers in the Overtime Elite playoffs. 6'7", great size, great frame, very projectable fit as a big wing who I think could be a really good defender and be kind of a two-way wing at the next level. He's someone who I think will be a top 10 pick. And at this spot in this draft, feels like pretty good value. He could go as high as, I think, number 5 to Detroit. And so getting him here at like number 7, I think, next to Tyrese Halliburton, I think that would be a nice little addition here.
Okay, I haven't heard as high as 5 to Detroit. If it happens, KB, you called it.
Detroit likes him. I think that's real. I think he's spot on with that.
What if we did have Wemby, Miller, Scoot, both Thompsons? If that actually plays out like that, I think the draft gets a little spicy if we get to.
And it'd be the first time in history, if I'm not mistaken, that we only have one pick in the top 5 coming from college basketball.
Ooh, great call. And this is also going to be the first time. Trivia time, Kyle Boone, because I know Finkelstein knows it. Last time the number 1 pick didn't come from college was.
Gosh, dang it! I just get so sweaty. Like I'm pitting out. Like
that's what Jim told me when he listens to when he's not even involved in them.
Oh my gosh, I hear trivia time and I just freeze up. Time?
What year?
Freeze up.
A player. If I give you the year, can you give me the player? Adam, you know it, right?
I don't. I've got like a couple. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It was 2001.
That's incorrect.
2002.
My wife's 100% Italian. Am I on to something?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Say it.
Andre Bargnani, is that how you say it?
Bargnani, yes. 2006 to the Raptors was the last time the number 1 pick did not come from college. That streak will snap this year, and there's an outside chance that we only have one college player picked in the top 5. That kind of corresponds with something GP and I talked about a lot on the show throughout last season, in that it was one of the weaker freshman seasons collectively we had seen in recent years. Okay, Washington is at 8. We've got Anthony Black going there. I can't see. I don't want to say I can't see. I think it's a very low chance Anthony Black drops below 8. I'm sure Utah is hoping that he drops that far. Black has worked out for Washington twice at this point, and this feels, in some ways, I mean, I could see him going to Orlando, but this almost feels like it might be as safe of a pick out, from 4 to 8. If you had to say what was the most likely, maybe it's Amen at 4 to Houston, maybe, I guess, but I don't know. I guess there's the potential they could be throwing everyone off the scent there. Anthony Black, I've written about him. I've talked about him. I can shut up about this. How about this, Adam? Do you think that Anthony Black has, with the fact that he doesn't have a good jump shot right now, I wrote this and I genuinely believe it. Do you think Anthony Black at his best at the NBA level can actually be a notch above what Ben Simmons has been, considering everything that has turned out to be the case with Ben Simmons?
I don't think he will be as good as Ben Simmons' best. I think people forget just how good Ben Simmons was before all the issues popped up. But I will say that Anthony Black is, if he goes number 8, he's one of the top 5 guys in on my board. I wrote this yesterday, like in terms of players who like you love Matt, like you love Derek Lively, like I love Anthony Black that way. And I'm higher on Lively than I think most are as well. But like Anthony Black to me is someone, when he came out of high school, like we knew he couldn't shoot. But we weren't really sure if he was like a big facilitating wing or a legit point guard. We're sure he's a legit point guard right now. He's also one of the best defenders in this class. He also has one of the highest IQs in this class. So when you combine the positional size, the basketball IQ, the ability to play make for others, and the defensive prowess, like that is a really impressive Venn diagram. And so the big question becomes the shooting. And I never want to make too much of some of the pre-draft stuff we see in the highlights and stuff like that. But just like we got really concerned when we saw Amen Thompson's shooting mechanics, I got optimistic when I saw some of the tweaks that Anthony Black had made, because he made so much progress this year at Arkansas. I think one of the things we don't talk about is that he got, he was kind of a lanky kid in high school. He put on a significant amount of muscle mass this year at Arkansas, and it did not impact the way he moved at all. So he's just as fluid, moving his feet on the perimeter. He's a defensive playmaker, and suddenly now he's a much better finisher than we expected. So this is a guy whose rate of improvement has been really linear at a pretty advanced rate. And when I saw clips of the shooting, I said, wait a minute. If he, again, just got to be able to make, pull-ups and some spot-up threes. We don't need James Harden step-backs out of you because you do so much else. And to the point you made earlier, Matt, some of these guys, whether we want to admit it right now or not, are going to be busts. I don't think Anthony Black will. I think he just has an overlap of too many things that are hard to find that he does well. So I'm a big Anthony Black believer.
Me too as well. Let's go to 9 at Utah. Now there's a number of risers, or at least perceived risers. And at this point, this guy is the biggest one. I'm actually going to tee up Adam first, and then KB, I want your input real quick after that as well. So we've got Utah and Danny Ainge running the front office. They're taking a swing, and it's a big one on a guy named Bilal Coulibaly. Now, he was Wembanyama's teammate this past season. He is on a rocket right now. I mean, the comparison in terms of stock and the advancement of it would be Jalen Williams a year ago out of Santa Clara, who wound up going, I think it was 12, and became a top 5 rookie this past season. This is admittedly is like a pretty big swing. Talking to 2 different people on Tuesday night, Adam, and these are 2 different people at the league level. It is not believed at this stage. Again, it's lying season, so I guess keep that in mind. It seems as though Coulibaly will not last past Toronto at 13. We've got him going 9 to Utah. Who is this dude, Adam?
So this is in a draft that has a number of high risk, high reward prospects. He's at the top of the list. He's a 6'6" with a, I think is it a 7'2" wingspan, something like that. He's ridiculously long. Is that what it is, Boone?
Yeah, Gavoni actually has it as 6'8". That's with shoes, with 7'2" and a quarter wingspan. So this dude is very, very long.
And he's equally athletic. He flies around the court defensively. And the shooting, there's enough that, like, it's not great, but there's enough there to be like, can you make shots in time? And now this is a guy who wasn't even on Wemby's team at the beginning of the season, but progressed so rapidly that they put him in there. As the person who was assigned Utah's pick last night, let me just offer a little bit of context. Utah is in straight rebuilding mode. If you followed Danny Ainge over the years, he believes in stars above everything else. They've got 3 first-round picks. He's not. This is a guy who. Are you guys golfers? Because this is a guy who tries to drive the green. He is not laying up here. If Danny Ainge takes a big cut, I'm going from golf to baseball. If he takes a big cut and he misses, he's not getting fired. He's not. You know what I mean? He's got the leverage to take a big swing here.
Put this in highlight terms for me, Adam. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, so I'm not saying this is going to work out. I'm just saying that given the upside, given what Utah's looking for, and given who is making the pick, I think this makes sense to me that he would take this shot.
Okay. KB, thoughts on Coulibaly?
Yeah, I think Coulibaly at this spot would be a power play, to put it in hockey terms, as
Here we go.
Yeah, he's a huge, I think, high risk, high reward gamble who has elite measurables. He really came on strong late in the season, played for Mets 92, who obviously Victor Wembanyama was his teammate, and Wembanyama was really good down the stretch, helped kind of lead that team to the Pro A finals. They ended up getting swept by Monaco, but Coulibaly was a huge part of that, really developed it. And I think Coulibaly's like scouting report is he's like really good in terms of his length, his size, his defensive acumen, can be kind of like a slasher cutter.
Yeah.
But really developed, I think, as someone who can create a little bit off the dribble, someone who showed some flashes finishing around the basket, and small sample size, but he shot it pretty well down the stretch from 3-point range too. So add all of that together, and you have someone who is shooting like above 35% from 3-point range. That's a really interesting combination. I'm trying to think of an equestrian term here to use, but I have none.
Okay.
I would just say that Coulibaly, like in 5 years, if we look up and he is like out of the league, it wouldn't surprise me. But if he's like a potential all-star in 5 years, it also wouldn't surprise me. So the Jazz obviously rebuilding here. They want to take a huge swing, and I think Coulibaly is definitely a worthwhile gamble.
Yeah, you mentioned huge swing, and obviously to put this in croquet terms, a big windup trying to hit it clean through the wickets there. I think that's the case there. Okay, Dallas is at 10, and trust me, I'm going to start clustering these picks once we get out of the lottery. Nada has informed me we are on pace for like a 3-hour podcast. This will not be a 3-hour podcast, said the guy who hopes this can't be clipped and shared later when it's a 3-hour podcast. I promise it won't be. I'm hearing that this might be the most vulnerable spot for a trade in the lottery. We will see if that comes to pass. Apparently, Dallas has been asking around. Again, it's lying season. We'll see. But it seems like this has the most potential in the lottery to potentially get moved. Credit to Bobby Marks. I saw this morning on Twitter. I didn't realize this was the case. 10 teams in this draft have 34 of the 58 picks. 10 teams have 34 of the 58 picks. And here's the deal. This is a mildly below average group overall as a draft class. Like, particularly if remove Wembanyama because he is tilting the scale. On balance, this is not the draft that you would not want to have a higher portion. I mean, the Pacers, good God, they got 5 picks in this thing. So I don't know if that means we have more or less likely trade action. There's usually there's a lot of stuff going on in the second round that no one really cares about or pays attention to. In the context of the lottery, that's what people want to see. Perhaps Dallas is going to be that team, but we are obviously thinking that it's going to keep the pick. We've got Hawkins, Jordan Hawkins out of UConn going 10th. I'll just say, right, we got Hawkins at 10. We've got Orlando at 11, Grady Dick. Seems like the debate between who's the best shooter in the draft is between those two. Oh, by the way, maybe it will be Brandon Miller. I mean, he's in that conversation as well. But pure shooting and what you're going to be known for, how you're going to earn your NBA paycheck, it's Hawkins and Grady Dick. We've got them back to back, so why not? KB, you start on Hawkins, and then Adam jump in with Orlando taking Grady Dick.
Yeah, Hawkins is, I think, a really good kind of high floor prospect who arguably could be the best shooter in the draft. I think it's a debate and a reasonable debate between Hawkins and Grady Dick. He was fabulous for UConn. Down the stretch, UConn won the national championship, as some people might remember.
First reported on the Ion College Basketball Podcast. That's right.
You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first. Average 16.2 points per game, was really kind of his own offensive weapon in a unique way, in that he reminds a little bit of, and I shouldn't compare to Steph Curry, but the way in which he runs around in circles and just creates his own offense just by being a complete madman is fabulous. It's fun to watch. He shoots, around 39% from 3-point range. I think it would be an excellent spot up shooter. Probably some questions about how his game beyond that will project in terms of his shooting ability. Like, I don't think he's going to be someone who's going to be necessarily a creator or a playmaker, but for what he is, I think he's going to be really good. If you're going to use him running off screens as a spot up shooter, someone who can kind of space the floor for you, I think that is obviously very, very valuable. Duncan Robinson is getting tons and tons of bags because he is a good shooter. Jordan Hawkins is going to get many, many bags because he is exactly that. He's a great shooter. In this range, it feels about right. I think he'll end up going top 20. Maybe doesn't have the star upside that you would hope for, but I think, again, high floor, you know what you're getting with him. He's an elite weapon when it comes to shooting the basketball.
All right, I'll give you my quick take. I don't envision Denver taking a defensive liability in the backcourt for as badly as they need shooting. So I think if Taylor Hendricks is on the board here, I would think that would be a higher probability that he would go rather than Jordan Hawkins. I subscribe to the theory that Hawkins is the best movement shooter in the draft. Grady Dick right there as well. I think Grady Dick's measurables are off the charts. I think Orlando has better perimeter defenders than Dallas does. They can afford to take either one of those guys, but I think they have more of a hole on the wing. So I think Grady Dick to Orlando is a very legitimate possibility. Jordan Hawkins, kind of a throwback two guard just because of his size, very lean frame. It's going to be interesting to see how long it takes to build that body up to the point where he's able to withstand the physicality he sees at the NBA level. Grady Dick can step right in, I think, and play minutes right off the bat. He's a little farther along physically. He's got better size. He's got a really high release. As I said, I do like Hawkins as the best movement shooter. I just think Grady Dick, more of a conventional wing with his size and farther along physically at this point.
OKC is at 12. We've got OKC taking Taylor Hendricks, but Adam, swing it right back to you. Volley it right back to steal a tennis term. A lot of college hoops fans didn't even see Taylor Hendricks last season. What did he do to go from solid college prospect, but not a five-star guy, to being a one-and-doneer at a school like UCF, which did not even compete to get into the NCAA tournament?
Well, he really checked the boxes as a 3-and-D prospect. So a lot of the players we've talked about in the top 10, we're talking about dynamic athleticism. I mean, you think about it, there's four of them. There's Coulibaly, there's the Thompsons, and there's Whitmore that we're saying, like, in even Wallace to Jarris Walker, to a certain extent, where you're saying, well, we're not sure how well he shoots it. He's not the same caliber athlete. Jarris isn't, but Taylor Hendricks is a shooter. And he's a shooter who combines that ability to stretch the floor with defensive versatility. So what he is not at this point is the playmaker that some of those guys are. But so where we've talked about a lot of high risk, high reward players because of the questions in the shooting, Taylor Hendricks is the opposite. He's a high floor guy because he's shown he can stretch the floor. He's shown he's quick off his feet athletically. He's shown he can be versatile defensively. And I know that's everybody's going to say versatile defensively. So let me break it down. It's 6'9". He can really move laterally. He can get out and slide his feet on the perimeter, but whether that's guarding like a stretch four or whether that's in various types of pick and roll coverages, he's also a very good weak side rim protector because he's quick off his feet and he's got good timing. So those are all things that are applicable to the NBA in day one. And even if he doesn't become a creator, he's at minimum a really solid role player. And as I wrote yesterday, I just have a hard time telling this 19-year-old who's improved at an exponential rate over the last 2 years that he doesn't have any upside. So that's why, to me, Taylor Hendricks is someone who is on the board, a possibility at number 5. And honestly, I think Taylor Hendricks is much more likely to go 5 to 8 than I do slip down here to 12. But if he goes to 12, my belief in Sam Presti's draft magic will be solidified for all time.
Fair enough. Hendricks is an interesting one to track, and obviously he's not the rise of the way that Coulibaly is, because Hendricks has been up there for a while, but he is a guy who, when he gets drafted on Thursday night, and if you just kind of dial into the draft or just listen to this podcast being like, all right, the draft's happening, let me check, and you're gonna be like, what? We've got Toronto at 13. We've got Derek Lively the second going there. I think Derek Lively will be a top 3, top 5 player from this class when we look up a decade from now, because I think he will develop into a modern 5 who can shoot reliably from distance. He's going to put on at least 10 pounds of muscle. Obviously, he's a lob menace, can rim run well, can guard in space. I want to keep the pod moving, so I'm not going to ask for evals on him. I know, Adam, you said you're pretty high on him. Not quite as no one's higher on Lively than me. I am pushing all in and saying he is going to grow into something pretty damn special. I think whereas before he was in the 14 to 20 range, as you know, a month ago, now it really feels like he could be anywhere from like 11 to 15 overall. We'll see. At 14, we've got New Orleans taking Jalen Hood-Schifino out of Indiana. And at 15, KB, we've got Cason Wallace out of Kentucky going to Atlanta there. Personally, for you, which of those two do you like better? Who do you think has the better chance of having the more long-lasting, fruitful NBA career?
Yeah, I like Jalen Hood-Schifino long term a little bit more than I like Cason Wallace. I think his combo guard skill set will be able to translate to the NBA. There's maybe some questions about Cason Wallace and what maybe he can do on that front, but Cason is a pretty good prospect in his own. I think I have wrestled, in fact, over both of these guys and where to rank them. Cason would make a lot of sense for the Hawks. He's a great defensive prospect, shot around 35% from three, can be kind of a secondary playmaker next to Trae Young, which I think is really important. There's a lot of untapped potential. We've seen kind of underutilized or misused guards at Kentucky over the years go on to be like NBA stars. Tyrese Maxey, Tyler Hero, Cason Wallace could definitely be next. So you're probably splitting hairs there, debating Jalen Hood-Schifino and Cason Wallace. Both these guys, though, are in the lottery. I think should be going in the lottery. Really, really high on both of these guys.
Yeah, and Matt, look out. Let me just add this 5 seconds. Look out for Jordan Hawkins at New Orleans because they need shooting. They took a big defensive guard last year. If Jordan Hawkins is on the board, I think there's a lot of smoke on that one.
I like those nuggets. So yeah, drop them in as you know for sure, Adam. Would be interested to see if Jordan Hawkins is still lingering there. Can see it. We'll see. I think Cason Wallace is like a top 2 perimeter on-ball defender in the draft. I
had no idea we were so aligned in this. This is great. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. I absolutely adored watching Cason Wallace play defense, and his shooting numbers. I mentioned this on a previous pod. Before he got injured at Kentucky, his shooting numbers were actually healthy. But we'll see. He's had a little bit of a bumpy pre-draft process there. At Utah, at 16, we've got Leonard Miller from G League Unite going, second G League Unite player. But Adam, real quick with Bufkin, Kobe Bufkin, 17 to the Lakers. I don't think he's going to be here at 17.
I agree.
I base that off of, and I'm not as like, I actually like Bufkin. I'm just not as in, I don't know. I just got to kind of see a little undersized, but he had a nice jump as a sophomore season. But in talking to a few folks past 48 hours, riser, like I don't think he's going to be here at 17. What was it about his sophomore season and pre-draft process that has enabled Bufkin to seemingly be on a pace to be a lottery pick?
So a few different things. One is the age. He was very young for a college freshman. In fact, as a sophomore, he's younger than a number of the freshmen currently in the draft. The second thing is context. There is a belief, whether right or wrong, that as the season began, this team was built around Jet Howard and Hunter up front, and that Kobe kind of assumed the role not out of what was necessarily given to him, but out of just what he showed that he had to take. There's also all of this untapped upside because he's still physically undeveloped. He's another one of these guys that has improved at such a rapid rate. And that to me is, for all the things we assess in this draft process, the rate of improvement is the thing we don't talk about enough. You can talk about who shoots, who's athletic, who's long, but who continues to get better is ultimately, what's going to be most important potentially down the road. Cody Bufkin is getting better at a rapid rate. And last but not least is extreme potential versatility as he builds up his body, because a lot like Jordan Hawkins, he may not be physically ready for the NBA, but he can potentially play on or off the ball. He's an engaged defensive player. And if the shooting, keeps coming, I think it's good enough where you have some optimism. He checks a lot of boxes. So getting better on off ball, super smooth lefty, defends. There's just a lot to like. I think he could be in play as early as OKC.
Every remaining player we have going in the first round played college basketball last season. We're going to take one more break, breeze through the rest of the first round, and then tell you about our second round sleepers before we get out of here. But first, one more break. Here's a word from our sponsors.
They say patience is a virtue. But for some things, we can't wait.
All right, so Kyle Boone will be back. If you're watching on video, Kyle Boone, well, he's no Scott Hansen. Let's put it that way. All right, 18, we've got Miami taking Dariq Whitehead. 19, we've got Jaime Jaquez going to Golden State. 20, we've got Kyle Boone. Where the hell are you? We're about to talk Andre Jackson Jr. Get back.
Oh, you can't skip Andre Jackson Jr.
I know. So we'll do right here. Yeah. There we go. There we go.
That's amazing.
We almost talked Andre Jackson Jr. without you. If you're listening, you're not seeing any of this, but this is why you should subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right. Whitehead out of Duke going to Miami. Jaquez going to Golden State. I actually think Jaquez has a good chance at Miami or Golden State. I feel like he's going somewhere in this like 17 to 20 range overall.
Yeah.
I love Jaquez. I think Jaquez is just going to be an amazing fit wherever he goes, and he is just going to find a way to stick around, be a sometime starter, and just be a dude who helps out a team. I love his long-term potential. Whitehead is super fascinating. I'll tee up Adam real quick on Whitehead because he's had 2 foot issues, had an inconsistent season last season. I saw this guy. I remember the first time I saw him play was at Peach Jam 2 years ago. I happened to be sitting next to Shire, and I was like, I gotta believe, because sometimes I step into a Peach Jam game and I know some of the guys, I don't know some of the others, and I hadn't looked at the roster, and I was like, John, I gotta believe you're here to watch this guy. He's like, yes, you're right. So he winds up going to Duke. He's got the size. He was a projected lottery pick, and now healthy chance he doesn't go in the lottery. But Adam, you really
ironic choice of words.
Yeah, exactly. You really like his chances, if I read this correctly, to ultimately be a guy who winds like no guarantee, but you think there's a healthy chance he's a top 10 player in this draft class when we look up a half decade from now?
I think there's, that's possible. I think if I had to phrase it, I think there's a chance he's a 10-year pro. I like the chances that he's a 10-year pro. I'll say this. One of my pet peeves, and through nobody on this podcast, is the people who
come right at me. Just come right. I can take it.
All right. So the people who go to Peach Jam and then they're like, "Oh, I saw him in high school." I'm like, "Come on, you saw him play once," And it's like, and my thing is Dariq Whitehead is not. There's all these narratives about what Dariq Whitehead was in high school, and again, this ironically is not about what you saw next to John Shire. It's about all the narratives about what Dariq Whitehead was in high school. And I saw this thing about how he was this shot maker in high school. No, he wasn't. Like he was a physically mature, tough kid who had a big reputation in 8th grade. And I can't emphasize how hard it is to be an 8th grader with national hype and to like still continue to get better each day, and how it speaks to like what's inside that person and the humility and the work ethic. So he was a big physical kid who could defend, who could pass, who could compete, and who continued to get better at that point. Where he's shown tremendous growth, and I alluded to this last night on the show, is with his shooting. So while he was hurt this year, to me, the fact that he continued to try and play this year when he was hurt the whole time, like there's no doubt if you saw him play in high school, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that he was a shell of himself athletically this year at Duke. But where there was clear progression was with regard to his shooting. So when you add all that stuff up and you say, as long as there's nothing like structurally wrong with him that's going to lead to some sort of chronic injuries, and I don't know that, I don't have access to the medical, but assuming there's no huge red flags in the medical, then yes, he's absolutely someone that I like more than most, because I know the backstory and I know who he was as an 8th grader and how he continued to get better. And I buy the defense, I buy the passing. I'm not even sure he worked out in Miami, but I think he fits the culture of who Miami is, and that's why I thought that might make some sense.
Yeah, there's a few guys with the medical that kind of make them moving targets, and Whitehead is one of them. We're going to get to another one in a second here. Andre Jackson Jr., 20 to Houston, KB. I think he will just make it work. I don't know if the shot's ever going to come together, but you look across the history of the NBA, and there are guys that find a way to play for a decade, and they serve certain purposes and roles, and Jackson does so many things. Andre Jackson Jr., Kyle Boone.
How are you guys related, Boone?
Yeah. And Andre Jackson Jr. is my large adult son, and I will happily take him top 20 in the NBA draft. He is 6'6", 200 plus pounds. Look at his counting stats last season for UConn, which won the national championship in men's college basketball this season. As we first reported on this podcast, 6.7 points per game, 6.2 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists per game. Intangible superstar, very good leader, someone who you want in your foxhole fighting with you. He's a dog. He's someone who I want on my team. I think he can play.
A husky, in fact.
Exactly.
Yes, I was just being factual there. he is someone who, like, the counting stats don't totally do justice, I think, to how impactful he can be as a player. I'm very high on him as a prospect. It's kind of a running bit, but I really do think he is like a mid to late first round talent in this draft. There's certainly some questions about what his shot is going to be, or if he is going to be able to shoot it at all at the NBA level. But, long combo guard, great defense, intangibles, someone who I think is going to be a good leader, kind of help lead that UConn team last season to a national championship. So definitely someone who I would be willing to take a gamble on, probably in this range in the draft.
Fascinated by where he winds up going. I'm high on him. You're high on him. Some others are high on him. He was a high-profile player for a national champion. If you told me he was still there at 27, it wouldn't stun me. But all it takes is one team, and he's going to just pass the interview process with flying colors, and just so many other things he does. So intriguing guy, but he's going to have to go to a team that wants to use him in the right ways. We'll see. Brooklyn back-to-back, 21-22. We'll see if that winds up sticking. A couple guys who I think the medicals here might play a part in where and how they get drafted. Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas, Bryce Sensabaugh out of Ohio State. Adam, quick thoughts on either one of those guys?
I think what you'll see Brooklyn do is take a swing with one pick. So I don't think it's likely they take both guys. I know in last night's mock, like, I was responsible for one. I think you were responsible for the other, Matt. I think what you'll see them do is take someone out of the Jaime Jaquez, Chris Murray, Omax type club, like someone who can come in and play rotation minutes, and then with the second pick, take a swing on someone like Sensabaugh or Nick Smith. Nick Smith was the top-ranked high school prospect in the country last year, had the knee injury, was not, we can only hope that some of the things we saw were a result of the knee or him trying too hard, because, like, defensively, there were real concerns there. Even in terms of the feel, like that to me, from a scouting standpoint, that stood out. Like, he looked like he was always in a rush this year, whereas in high school, he was always playing within the flow and everything was smooth. So it was a much different pace, and not in a good way, that we saw him at this year at Arkansas. I'm going to choose to believe, like, if you see some of, like, his reactions in the locker room afterwards, you could see how emotionally vested he was in playing for I believe it's his home state university. So I think a lot of it had to do with that. I still have hopes for his upside, but I admittedly have more questions than I did coming out of high school. Bryce Sensabaugh, just like this big-bodied scoring kind of mismatch because of how naturally thick he is, scoring guard, scoring wing. My questions there, admittedly, are how that impacts winning. I mean, Ohio State was so disappointing this year that I just don't put a whole lot of stock in the guy who scores for the team that doesn't win. So I'm admittedly a little more, I don't want to say lower, but a little more skeptical of him than others may be. But I think those are two high upside prospects that could be on the board for Brooklyn. I do expect them to go safer with one of the two picks, though.
All right, next two are very different players. We got Portland taking Jackson Davis, Trace Jackson Davis, and we got Sacramento taking Omax Prosper. Jackson Davis was the focal point on his team and the second best player in the sport last season. Omax Prosper was on an even better team, but he was a supplementary piece who has just given jet fuel to his draft stock. One word, buy or sell Omax Prosper as like a long-term hit. Kyle Boone, buy or sell Omax Prosper. Are you buying the pre-draft hype? Buy or sell?
I am buying.
Okay. Adam, buy or sell?
Define hit.
He is going to make it to he will be in the NBA for 8 years and play through 2 contracts.
Okay. Mid-level or below. I'll take that. Yeah. I'll buy. Yeah.
I think I would sell. Some of these guys are not going to do it. I don't know. We'll see.
I would sell Jackson Davis. I apologies to my friends at Indiana, but
no,
you
know what?
How dare you?
I would. I think I would as well, and love the player.
Is this live? Am I getting text yet? Hold on.
You're good. But all
when
right,
Indiana gets internet in 3 weeks,
that's true.
You'll hear from
them. I didn't even think about that.
You'll hear from them.
Indiana fans thought they were spared with no Gary Parrish on the pod, and here comes Finkelstein.
My guy Peegs. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, 25. Speaking of Gary Parrish, Memphis All right, Memphis taking Chris Murray. I don't think Murray's on the board at 25 personally. I think that he has done enough and shown enough that he will be gone by here. But nonetheless, we have the Grizz taking Chris Murray, and I like Chris Murray's. How about this? Of the guys that recently just went off the board here, I like Murray more than Omax. I like him more than Trace. I like him more than Sensabaugh. I think I like him more than Smith, and Jackson's right there. I do like Hawkins a lot, so that's something to be considered. All right, 26 Indiana, Brandon Pajemski from Santa Clara. Kyle Boone has a feature on Pajemski that is going up Wednesday, shortly after this podcast goes live. So obviously, you have the floor, Kyle Boone.
Yeah, I'm excited to steal a pickleball term here.
I'm leaving. This is
Brandon Pajemski. He's been in the kitchen. He's cooking.
There we
He's
go.
cooking. And his draft stock is soaring right now. This is a guy who, like a month and a half ago, was, maybe late first round pick projected.
Can I rebuttal? Go ahead. I just want to rebuttal. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Finish.
Oh my gosh.
You can rebuttal.
One. Anyways, so got me rattled, Fink. Pajemski's a guy who I think will end up being a top 25 pick. He just got invited to participate in the green room, which is a pretty good indication for the most part historically that you're going to be a first round pick.
KB, there's been like 34 invites, and that's fine. Have all these people go experience, but it is not what it once was. So
yes, yeah, and we'll see. I think his range in this draft is somewhere between like 15 and 30. It's pretty wide. He's worked out for a ton of teams. But this is someone who was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, went to Illinois, played 69 total minutes at Illinois, decided to transfer. Brad Underwood essentially said, like, you're not good enough to play here. Go somewhere else. He goes to Santa Clara, follows in the footsteps of one Jalen Williams, who was the number 12 pick in last year's draft, wins co-WCC Player of the Year honors. Really smooth combo guard, can shoot it, can be a facilitator. I'm high on his prospects. I think, I have him probably ranked somewhere between like 20 and 25. And yeah, like I think he can be a useful kind of rotation guard for a long time. Let's hear your rebuttal, Fink. Let's hear it.
All right. So real quick, he is, I actually agree with the vast majority of what you said there. I do think he'll be taken in the first round. I've been told that if he's available at 30, that the Clippers are very, very high on him. And I think obviously the NBA has access to that intel as well, because they're not going to risk inviting someone to the green room who's going to be there in the second round, because that makes for bad TV. So I do think he'll be taking
amazing TV. Just, Will Levis lasts until day 2 in the NFL draft. Let's just keep that in mind here. So, but let's they've vetted this out better.
That's rough. But, so much of this to me, and like, I enjoy this because, like, hey, we had him evaluated right out of high school. Like, he should have played more at Illinois. But I wonder if the pendulum has swung too far in the opposite direction, because, like, there's no similarities in his game. People want to talk about Jalen Williams like they couldn't be more opposite as a player. Totally. At the NBA Combine, they do a they measure vertical leap, and it's strictly how high up you get. And he measured a 39-inch vertical leap. So the people who want to like Brandon,
39 and a half.
30 exactly. So people who want to like Brandon really value every half inch in that process. Right. Whereas if you watch him play, I mean, his feet almost never come off the ground. Like, he doesn't play athletically at all. Like, give him a runway with no bodies around him, sure, he'll rise up, but that's not functional basketball athleticism. He also, like, there's a length issue as well. So I think offensively, he's very intriguing because of his shot making, but defensively and athletically, I have a lot of concerns. I do think he's a first round pick, though.
Yeah. Okay. We wrap up the first round with this quartet. All right. Charlotte takes Keontae George out of Baylor. Utah takes Jet Howard out of Michigan. Indiana takes Noah Clowney out of Alabama. And the Clippers take Colby Jones out of Xavier. Kyle Boone, you go first. Which of those 4 players do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I would go Jet Howard at 28.
Let's talk Jet, and let me interrupt you right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I feel like his projections have been a little bit all over the place, and I find him to be a polarizing prospect in the context of him. Like some couple people I've talked to really aren't that huge on his prospects at this point in his life, while others seemingly are. I think he probably gets taken the first round, but I would put him in the group that it would not surprise me if we actually get to pick 31 and he is
in the green room.
I actually don't know if he's in the green room or not. I don't know that to be the case, Adam. Question. So, Kyle, what are your thoughts on Jet?
Yeah, like I think he's someone who will end up being pretty wide in terms of like where we think he will be drafted. I've seen people have him as like a late lottery guy. He fell to the late first round here. Someone who is a really good shooter. There's some probably some questions about like what else can he bring to the table. He's got good size. He's got good frame. So I think if he can channel that and harness it, could be a good or serviceable defensive player in time. He struggled throughout kind of the back half of last year at Michigan as a true freshman. I think he was dealing with some injuries, and maybe that had something to do with it. Kobe Buffkin's rise probably also had something to do with it. That team just not being very good and not being very cohesive at Michigan probably had something to do with it. But yeah, just generally speaking, like 6'8" wings who shoot around 37% from three. I'm buying, especially in this part of the draft where it's hard to find, like useful role players. I think Jett Howard can at least be a useful role player. So there's some value here, I think, in Jett Howard. I'd be surprised if he fell this far in the draft on Thursday night.
Adam, either way, good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah, he is in the green room. You're not going to invite Juwan Howard's kid if he's not going to get taken in the first round. He's got to be able to defend his position. Tough shot maker, positional size, just like Boone said, doesn't defend. And whether he can't or he won't, that is the question. But he's got to be able to defend his position. Keontae George, to me, and Noah Clowney, the other two potential one and done freshmen. Keontae George was a 5-star guy coming out of high school, totally changed his body in this last year. Like, to me, he's good value at the potential upside, like scoring guard. And Clowney's interesting because he's got the length and athleticism with, he went to the perfect school because he was encouraged to shoot 3-pointers despite, like, statistically it being, I believe, under 30%. So now people are intrigued by his shooting potential in the combination of his athleticism. And he too has a green room invite, which suggests that there's intel that he's going to be a first-round pick.
That is our first round. Before we get out of here, I do want to talk about a few guys that we like that did not get picked in our mock, and second-round guys who we think will hit. Just prove to be taken many spots too late, and when we look up, they're just going to undeniably be a number of teams will have missed on them. So I'll give my first three here, and then you guys give me three others apiece. So the ones who did not go off the board, and mine are all like probably back end second round guys. These are guys that I think are going to make it. They're going to stick. They're going to get to a second contract. I love Isaiah Wong out of Miami, super confident player. He's got some age to him. Good distributor. Absolutely has NBA range, and he might be a situation where he's got to go to the right team. But I really like his chances. Really good athlete. Adama Sanogo, I'm very big on, and occasionally, I'll talk to an NBA guy, and they'll be like, "Man, you're such a college writer. Like, you love these guys." But I'm just telling you, Sanogo's bigger than you think he is. He's got great touch, awesome around the rim. He actually showed he could shoot a little bit from three. They're not going to ask him to do that at the next level, so he will be limited. But I do think he is going to make it in the NBA. I think his overall value and what he can do is even still undervalued in this draft class. So I like Sanogo. And then Jordan Miller, I watched him be tremendous. So yes, I have two Hurricanes on my list. He was, as a guy who's a little bit more unconventional at the wing spot, I saw it time and time again. And I think that if he goes to the right franchise, he is going to be someone that can put up significant minutes and real impact through 2 contracts. So those are my 3 non-first rounders, and mine are all on the back end. Adam, I'll go to you. 3 guys that we did not pick in the first round who you like to eventually be, top 20 to 30 players from this class X number of years from now.
Yeah, so potential first round caliber picks that we didn't mention. Marcus Sasser out of Houston. I think the biggest question is durability, given some of the injuries he's had. There's been a toe, a shoulder, and Achilles, but he really defends. He's really long for a relatively undersized guard by NBA standards, and he's got a pretty versatile bag offensively. It's there's not a lot of point guard depth in this class, so I think you could see him between 25 and 30 if he slips into the second round. He's someone to me that could stick. Ben Shepherd out of Belmont, another guy who I think has significant first round traction, 6'5" guard. If you're looking for a 3-and-D guy, because, just like we were saying with Jet Howard, like we know he shoots, but he doesn't guard. There's a lot of guys who were saying, Boone, correct me on the pronunciation here, but is it Ryan Rupert? We know he guards, but he doesn't shoot. Ben Shepherd's one that checks both boxes. He's 6'5". He made 42% of his threes this year, knocked down 2.5 per game. I think he made 48% of his threes on the move last year at Belmont. He can guard, defend. I think he's a more versatile. Ironically, I'm not sure those shooting numbers sustain themselves, but I think he's a more versatile player than is advertised. I think he's got a significant chance to go in the first round. And then one of my personal favorites is Kobe Brown out of Mizzou. Just this big, almost football build, 250 pounds. But he's skilled too. He can dribble, pass, and shoot. He dribbled and passed under Konzo Martin, and last year after the coaching change, he started to shoot. If those shooting numbers sustain themselves, he's like this versatile guy who, although he's not like super light on his feet, he can defend bigger guys, guard up the lineup. If he can make threes for teams that like to play small ball, he would make a lot of sense. Like Golden State, that would be a terrific fit.
All right, to lift a term from track, obviously, let's hand the baton to Kyle Boone. 3 guys you like not going in our first round are?
Yeah, I'll go with Ryan Rupert. That's someone who Finkelstein just mentioned here. 6'6" wing from the NBL. Played with the New Zealand Breakers. Guards, but not a shooter at this point. Definitely a project prospect, but I love me some project prospects late in the first round, early in the second round. He's 6'7", has a 7'2" wingspan. I think there's some promise there. There's a lot of, I think, potential long-term. I would be buying some Ryan Rupert stock in a few years. I think he could be one who we look up and is actually making an impact in the NBA. Did you take Ben Shepherd?
I did, but you double down. We can both take Ben Shepherd. I was going to take Andre Jackson as my favorite second round pick. So you.
How dare you? I can't share, so I'm not going to try and share Mr. Ben Shepherd with you. I will take Tristan Vucevic from Serbia. He's someone who stood out at the NBA draft combine, played really well in the scrimmages, played so well the first day that he decided, yeah, you know what? I'm good. I don't need to come back for the second day. He's 7 foot, had a stretch in the first scrimmage where I don't know the exact number, but he scored like 13 points in a row and had the complete attention of the gym where he was scoring it from the inside. He was doing some back to the basket stuff and fadeaway stuff. He was shooting some threes. 7-footers who can do that are pretty darn rare. And there's definitely, I think, some questions about his defense, his probably his mobility. He had the second worst vertical jump at the NBA draft combine, obviously worse than Brandon Pajemski, who had a 39.5-inch vertical jump. But I like Vucevic. He's someone who I think will end up being a top 40 pick in this class. And then the final one that I will throw out here, I can't believe you took Kobe Brown. I'm just so offended. So offended. I will go with Turk Smith. He's 6'3", like 160 pounds, very, very skinny. Had
like
a kind
me.
of who? Yeah.
I'm like 6'3", 172. Wow.
Yeah.
I also have a 39.5-inch vert, just so we're clear.
Okay. 39 or 39.5.
39.5. Get it right.
Okay.
Half inch. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, like someone who's going to be a natural scorer in the NBA, maybe a microwave scorer off the bench. He's got great range, good pick and roll weapon. Not really a facilitator. Definitely on the slender side. Probably needs to improve his defensive acumen, but yeah, there's a lot to like. He's kind of a skinny assassin who can do a lot of things on offense. I like kind of what he brings to the table. I feel like on offense, kind of to use a football term, he can really blitz you on offense, score a lot of points in bunches. So someone who I like is probably a little bit overlooked right now, but long term, I'm buying some Turk Smith stock.
We've really
Canadian doubles is where it's 2-on-1, right? That's Canadian, the tennis term. That's where it's Canadian doubles, 2-on-1.
I think so.
I'm out on the right now. Listen, credit to Finkelstein. I mean, he came in. First of all, can you imagine him hopping on this? Like if Parrish was on here Parrish wouldn't allow 4 people. He's just not allowing a 4-person podcast. Not if it's up to him. But he got the full experience. This thing is an hour and 20 with ads. It's like an hour 27. But I appreciate you so much, Adam, for coming in and stepping in here. That is
Boom, love you, brother. This was fun. Yeah,
this was a ton of fun. Before we get out of here, I got 2 more things, and then we're gonna go.
Right.
One, I see Nada's freaking tweeting about the Hornets. He's done. He's done. Nada, get on the microphone. You're not getting out of this draft.
Sir, I am emotionally cooked. I'm cooked.
No, I don't care.
I got nothing left.
One word. I want one word. It is up to you.
All I ask is that they don't embarrass me.
You are Mitch Kupchak. Okay? You are running the Hornets. Do you want Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller on your team? A reminder, this dude hated Mark Williams a year ago.
Which is why I wasn't a fan of Brandon Miller at the beginning. I had some people tell me, hey, you're being an idiot about this. So I'm going to go with instead of going for the sugary sweet Scoot Henderson, I'm going to go eat my Wheaties, eat my spinach, and I'm going to take the Brandon Miller. Okay, because I think there is something there. Even though I don't think he's going to be strong enough to be an NBA level guy for at least 2 years. It's Brandon Miller for me at this point.
Okay. So he's going Brandon Miller. That is the expected route. I'd love a plot twist. We will see about that. And one tiny bit, we'll loop in the 247 Sports Universe even more on this podcast. Travis Branham, our colleague, but really Finkelstein's colleague on that side, he tweeted, news: Kentucky guard Antonio Reeves moved into his dorm last night and is expected to return to Kentucky for the 2023-24 season. A source tells 247 Sports. Calipari is back. That is huge. There had been plenty of speculation. We will get into that more on another episode once that actually becomes official and after we get through the draft. GP and I will get into all that. But it did happen in the context of us recording this episode. And so that is a bit of college news. Kentucky has 5 scholarship spots to spare at this point. Getting Reeves back, I actually think, would be an important deal there. So we will see if indeed that winds up being true. But 247 Sports' Travis Branham did report it all of 20 minutes ago.
He's tied in at Kentucky. I would be shocked if he were wrong.
Yep. Right there with you. So Kentucky fans, good little bit of news there. See if you want to fill out the rest of your roster throughout the remainder of this offseason. All right.
And how about John Calipari? Retaining a player? To use, kind of a boxing term, just bobbing and weaving during the offseason, the transfer portal, navigating these tough times. Got a couple 3 stars on the way. Antonio is back. Look at that.
You have squeezed out that sponge, by the way. And I appreciate everyone doing that. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know. Leave a comment, like the video. Adam and I will be on set Thursday night, CBS Sports HQ draft.
I'm gonna wear a tie for you.
You better wear a tie. I'm rocking a tie. I always rock a tie. KB, you're doing some hits from home. Our lead draft expert. Also, I think this is what's going down. So Adam's going to do the grades on HQ, but I think Kyle's doing the grades for the site. Am I right about that?
I think what it is I'm like grading each pick and Kyle's grading each team, I think.
Okay. All right. Something. Listen, if you're looking for grades.
Yeah. We got a lot of grades.
We got them covered across the board there. And you will enjoy. I highly suggest a second screen, primary screen. Bring up the HQ show. We don't mess around, and we have a really good time and a lot of fun, informative information, which you also got on this podcast. So thank you for listening. GP will be back on the show very, very soon. For Kyle Boone, Adam Finkelstein, I'm Matt Norlander. We'll see you on draft night, and we'll talk to you real soon.